Our opening thought this morning is Transgender Day of Remembrance Prayer by Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. On this Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember those who have been murdered for being who they are, those who face violence on a daily basis, those who have lost loved ones, and those who worry for loved ones. May we come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression, and to a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult and confusing. May all of us who live with the threat of violence find support, strength, community, hope, and safety from violence. Our reading this morning is an excerpt from an article titled "The People I Remember on Trans Day of Remembrance," written by Aaron Reed. Every transgender person you meet has lost someone. Most of us have lost many. This is a reality I believe is often misunderstood by most cisgender individuals. The cold statistics of suicides and murder rates, frequently cited in studies and debates against right-wing media figures, can obscure the personal impact. For us, these statistics represent living, breathing individuals we knew, Discord users whose status no longer turns green, phone numbers that will never send another text or call, faces in photographs that resurface every November 20th, only to be gradually overshadowed by newer images of more people who we've lost. Our efforts must persist until the day we no longer need to add another photograph to the memorial of those lost to such injustices on the day we honor the memory of the trans individuals who are no longer with us. Our second reading is by Quinn Gormley. They Can't Take Our Sparkle. I've become known as Chaplain Sparkle Shoes at the hospital where I work. My wardrobe choice is intentional. It's more precise than calling me the trans chaplain. There were a few of us, and disarms the grim Reaper baggage conveyed by my job title. Simply put, the shoes make me more approachable. They start multiple conversations each day. They make kids and old ladies smile. They make grumpy old men flirt. More than one psych patient, upon glimpsing them, has started to dance. Besides these vocational reasons for wearing sparkly shoes, they go with all my outfits, are superbly comfortable, and scratch a girly itch in my brain that loves all things shiny. I rock them. When I was getting dressed this week, I found myself wearing head to toe black, dress, leggings, socks, blazer. I even had black earrings. I sat down on the edge of the bed, feeling like I needed to put on armor. These next 4 years will be brutal. I need to be tough and ready for battle. So I slid on my combat boots and made for the door. Just before I stepped outside, a voice in my head said, "No, Quinn, they don't get to take your sparkle." An important lesson for cis people is that if you want to know what's good about a gender, ask a trans person. What good masculinity? Talk to a trans man. What someone who really understands what's valuable about femininity? Talk to a trans woman. As a trans woman, I love the way women are soft. To be clear, I love the way women are strong, tough, and ready to fight, too. My dating history makes this clear. I love the ways we sparkle, the ways we twirl. This is how I entered the world, and I've paid a high price for it my entire life. But last fall, the Republican Party spent $215 million on ads targeting women like me, trans people. They want me to be something I never have been and never will be, a man. They're coming for us. We're going to have to fight. We're going to have to be strong. But they don't get to take my sparkle or my softness or my twirling or my joy. And they sure as hell don't get to take my gender.
$241. This is the number of trans people who have been killed this year so far and that we know of. 34 of those are from the United States. The true number of how many have been taken from this world too soon is something we can never fully know for certain. Far, far too often, trans people are denied the basic decency of their identity, even in death. Reports of their deaths strip their trans identity from them and simply refer to them as what they were born as and not who they became. 1,009. That is the number of anti-trans legislation introduced in the United States this year alone, so far. 139 of those are from Texas alone. I bring up legislation because these numbers are directly correlated. There is an undeniable tie between the amount of violence the transgender community has suffered this year and the obscenely large number of anti-trans bills introduced. This year has seen the most yet. In 2022, there were 174 anti-trans bills introduced. In 2023, there were 615. That's more than the previous 8 years combined. 2024 had 701. And now, here we are at over 1,000. I need to note that not all of these bills have passed. The majority have not. That is a good thing, of course, but the mere introduction of them is still an act of violence. When you attempt to legislate the very existence of a group of people, it is an act of violence. Every single one of these bills, regardless of whether or not they pass, contribute to the intensely hostile environment that transgender people in America find ourselves in. I want all of you to imagine waking up every day to find out that this country's current administration wants you dead. They may not outright say that's the end goal, but it's not hard to read between the lines. And sometimes they do outright say it. In 2023, Daily Wire host Michael Knowles said, quote, "For the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely." This is the reality that trans people in this country are living through right now. It is exhausting, it is demoralizing, and it is dehumanizing. I'm going to share with you all just a few bills introduced in Texas this year that stuck out to me. But let me be clear, just because these are all from Texas, that does not mean that there are not similar bills across the country. Texas House Bill 4311. I promise I'm not reading this entire thing, I have parts highlighted. An act relating to required reintegration therapy coursework and training for certain mental health professionals. Reintegration therapy means therapeutic practices designed to assist an individual who has undergone or considered social or medical transition from the individual's sex, fostering reconciliation with the reality of biological sex. Each institution of higher education that offers a mental health professional degree program shall require students enrolled in the program to complete a course of instruction on reintegration therapy. The curriculum must cover 1. Alienation from self and resulting psychological impacts. 2. Familial attention and strategies for reconciliation. 3. Gender stereotypes and that stereotypes do not determine an individual's sex. 4. The binary reality of sex. 5. Coping strategies for individuals who feel a loss of self due to attempts at social or medical transitioning. And 6. Other topics as determined by the coordinating board relating to the psychological, social, and medical implications of social or medical transitioning, including but not limited to the negative consequences of surgical intervention, puberty blockers, or other hormones binding and tucking. The Executive Council may not renew the license of a license holder who does not complete the training required by this section. This is conversion therapy. This is state-mandated conversion therapy. And we know from all the studies done on the efficacy of conversion therapy that it does not work and instead actively harms the patient. One such study, led by Stanford Medicine in 2024, found that conversion therapy is linked to greater symptoms of depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicidality. If this is passed, it will kill people. Texas House Bill 3431. An act relating to prohibitions on the provision to certain children of gender-affirming therapy and counseling, creating criminal offenses. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, a non-physician mental health professional may not provide gender-affirming therapy or counseling to a child to treat gender dysphoria if the purpose of the therapy or counseling is to affirm a gender inconsistent with the child's biological sex as determined by the sex organs, chromosomes, and endogenous profiles of the child. A person who violates this section commits an offense. An offense under this section is a state jail felony. By outlawing gender-affirming mental health care for minors, the state of Texas shows that it does not truly care for the well-being of children and teenagers, and instead cares only for conformity and upholding rigid gender roles. We know that gender-affirming mental health care saves lives, and we know the damage that non-affirming mental health care can cause. I personally know how that can impact a child. If this is passed, it will kill people. Texas House Bill 3478. An act relating to the definitions of child abuse and neglect. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, abuse includes the following acts or omissions by a person: causing, permitting, encouraging, engaging in, or allowing a psychological or social intervention intended to affirm a child's perception of the child's gender if that perception is inconsistent with the child's biological sex and is A, severe or pervasive enough to cause harm to the child's perception of the child's gender or identity, or B, an intervention by an adult authority figure in the child's life. Abuse does not include the refusal by a person responsible for a child's care, custody, or welfare to affirm a child's perception of the child's gender if that perception is inconsistent with the child's biological sex, including a refusal to use a child's preferred name or pronouns if the name and pronouns are inconsistent with the child's biological sex, regardless of whether the child's name has been legally changed or a child's expressed sexual orientation. Constituting the mere acceptance of a trans child as abuse is evil in ways I cannot begin to describe. I do not need to stand up here and explain to you all how dangerous this would be if it were to become law. If this is passed, it will kill children. Texas House Bill 5593. An act relating to the eligibility of an individual to adopt or foster a child. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, only an adult who identifies as the same biological sex listed on the individual's birth certificate entered at or near the time of birth may petition to adopt a child. This bill seeks to deem transgender people unfit to adopt children based solely on their transness. The implication that it is inherently unsafe for a child to be raised by transgender parents is staggering in its animosity. And I hope that by the end of this morning, I will have properly shown you that these types of bills will not stop at adopting children, but that their end goal is to bar trans people from being parents in any way, shape, or form. Texas House Bill 1655. This is the last one, I promise. An act relating to a policy prohibiting public school employees from assisting a student with social transitioning and to the loss of state funding for a violation by a public school. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas in this subchapter, social transitioning means a person's transition from the gender identity associated with the person's biological sex assigned at birth to an alternative gender identity through the adoption of a different name, different pronouns, or other expressions of gender, including clothing and hairstyles that are 1. Typically associated with the biological sex opposite of the person's biological sex assigned at birth, and 2. Intended to communicate a person's alternative gender identity. Whatever that means, honestly. The Board of Trustees of a school district shall adopt a policy prohibiting an employee of the district from assisting a student enrolled in the district with social transitioning, including by providing any information about social transitioning or providing guidelines intended to assist a person with social transitioning. A parent of a student enrolled in the district or a district employee may report to the Board of Trustees of the district a suspected violation of the policy. If the board determines that a district employee has assisted a student enrolled at the district with social transitioning, the board shall immediately report the violation to the commissioner. If the commissioner finds that a school district has violated this section, the commissioner shall withhold the funding to which the district is entitled for the school year during which the violation occurred. The commissioner may adjust the district's entitlement to funding for subsequent school years as necessary to recover any state funding already paid to the district for the school year in which the violation occurred. This is the one that hit closest to home for me, I think. I had some wonderful, wonderful teachers and staff members in school. One of my teachers went out of her way to black out my dead name on the Scantrons so that I wouldn't have to read it. Remember those, like, you had to, like, bubble in the answers? I hated those. That same teacher gave me a little info card with the number for the Trans Lifeline on it. I kept that card in my wallet for years after I graduated. I have so many stories of the ways I was supported by the staff at my school that I could share, but I'll summarize their impact with this. I didn't know it at the time, and I'm sure they didn't either, but those teachers saved my life. They saved it over and over and over again. Every single day, they supported and cared about me. If this bill had been law when I was in school, if I did not have that acceptance and that love, I would have killed myself. And I'm not saying that to garner sympathy or anything like that. I just need you all to know that I speak from experience when I say that if this passes, it will kill kids. And unfortunately, I had already finished and printed out my script when I found this out. There is a bill almost identical in its language prohibiting teachers and staff at public schools from assisting in social transitioning for children, State Bill 12, or is it Senate? Whatever SB stands for. Senate, thank you. Senate Bill 12, which did pass. It's unclear how that will be enforced, what may happen, but I want you all to know that a bill almost identical to this one has passed, and we will have to see the effects in the future. I could go on and on and on. For those of you who were unaware of the sheer magnitude of these bills, I hope this gives you a sense of what I'm trying to convey. There is a mountain of hatred weighing down on transgender people in America every single day, spearheaded by the current administration and the Republican Party at large. And as with many mountains, there comes the avalanche. In our case, the avalanche of violence and tragedy befalling the transgender community. We're going to get into the really heavy topics here. I will be discussing examples of abuse, assault, suicide, and murder. I will not be overly grotesque in my descriptions, but I will not be shying away from the brutality either. It is, in my opinion, important that people outside the transgender community hear and understand the violence without it being sugar-coated. And I would also just like to give an opportunity for anyone who does not wish to hear these things, if they would like to leave for a few minutes, now would be that time. In Seattle, on March 27th, a group of men assaulted a trans woman as she was leaving her workplace. They viciously beat her. She was left with a black eye, a chipped tooth, numerous bruises, and acute bleeding in her brain. During the attack, the men repeatedly said, "Semper Fi," the motto for the United States Marine Corps. She told her attackers that she was a veteran, and one of the men responded by bringing up President Trump's, at the time, recent ban on transgender people serving in the military. One of the men involved had previously attacked another trans woman the year prior. In Mississippi, 17-year-old trans girl Jordan J.J. May took her own life. She began transitioning when she was a freshman in high school. Gender-affirming care is illegal in Mississippi, so her mom took her to Louisiana. Then Louisiana outlawed gender-affirming care, so her mother took her to New York. Her mental health was deteriorating, but many long-term facilities refused to take her as a patient unless she went as a male. Her family asked her psychiatrist for a hospital stay at an inpatient unit, but the psychiatrist said it was unnecessary. 3 days later, on March 8th, her mother found her body. A day later, her death was posted about on a local Facebook page, and there were many comments blaming the family for accepting her as a girl. I will not be reading it here, but I have printed out a statement written by JJ's grandmother, and I encourage everyone to read it after the service today. It is gut-wrenching, and I am not ashamed to say that reading it made me weep. Beginning in December of 2024 and continuing through early February of this year, a 24-year-old trans man named Sam Nordquist endured horrific torture at the hands of 5 people. Sam was sexually assaulted with a table leg and was beaten with sticks, dog toys, ropes, and belts until he died. These are just a few of the atrocities committed against transgender Americans this year. I hope that you can see and understand that these incidents are not isolated from the political climate we are living in. To my brothers, buried in dresses under names that aren't theirs. To my sisters, buried in suits under names that don't belong to them. And to my non-binary and genderqueer siblings, buried in clothes that don't fit who they truly were under a name that they did not choose. Your deaths are mourned, and your absence is felt. May your souls find the peace they were refused in life. There's a short poem by Becky Brooks titled "Queer in America." We were erased and still we loved. We were shamed and still we loved. We were expelled and still we loved. We were laughed at and still we loved. We were hunted and still we loved. We were sacrificed and still we loved. We were marketed and still we loved. We were legislated and still we loved. We were murdered and still we loved. We were murdered and still we love. It's a beautiful poem, but I heavily disagree with the usage of were. As I've shown you all this morning, we are still experiencing these things. We are erased and still we love. We are shamed and still we love. We are legislated and still we love. We are murdered and still we love. We are murdered and still we love. My goal this morning, despite how it may seem, is not to depress you all. My goal is to make you aware of what has happened, what is happening, and what will continue to happen if we do not act. So, what can you personally do? Keep trans people in mind. Do not allow us to become an afterthought in your activism. Keep up to date on trans issues. A great resource for this is Erin in the Morning, ran by Erin Reed. She has spent the last several years reporting on the increasing level of anti-trans sentiment in this country and its effects. Another fantastic resource is the Trans Legislation Tracker. They track, and I'm quoting from their website here, legislation that seeks to block trans people from receiving basic health care, education, legal recognition, and the right to publicly exist. Their work was invaluable in my being able to share with you all the things I have today. The burden of tracking legislation like this cannot rest solely on transgender people's shoulders. Put in the work to stay informed. Do not wait to be informed by others. Contact your state and local government about proposed legislation. Let them know your thoughts. Do not let them go unchallenged in their cruelty. And finally, be there for the trans people in your life. Ask them how they're doing. Offer, to whatever extent you are able, to help them with anything they need. If the only thing you can offer is an ear to listen or a shoulder to cry on, that's fine. Sometimes that's all a person needs. Lord knows that the times we are living in have left all of us lacking in the energy department. I'm not great at ending things. I am not a scholar, an author, a mathematician, which I definitely spelled wrong in my script, or anything like that. This has all been done on my own, and while I have done my best to ensure that all of the data I used here is accurate and up to date, it is inevitable that I have made a mistake or 10 somewhere. So please do not take everything I have stated today as fact. We're Unitarian Universalists. We're pretty good at having a healthy amount of skepticism, right? That said, I have, or at least attempted to, compile all of my sources, so I will be more than happy to share those with anyone interested.
Our closing words are from Let the Living Be Witness by Kimmy Floyd Reish. Today we remember our sacred kin. Each one was beloved. Each one mattered. But memory alone is no longer enough. Our candles do more than flicker in sorrow. They are beacons that light a path for the living to find sanctuary. They lead us toward a world where every trans, non-binary, intersex, gender-beautiful person can safely live in their truth. To honor the dead is not just to say names, but to commit to protect the living. To mourn is to move, to build, to act. To center love in a way that keeps people alive. May we commit to love the living well enough that we keep fighting, no matter how long it takes, until there are no more names to be mourned, no more lives taken by violence too soon.